Hi, everyone. Welcome again to While China On Air's book club discussions. And today we have Derek Sandhouse joining us. And thank you. This is our 80th event, 80发的那个 events, right? My name is Zhang Mei, founder of While China. Many of you are old friends and welcome to see new friends as well. And so this week we read this book. I was looking for something. Drunk in China. Actually, Derek, you didn't know. I saw your earlier book on Chinese Baijiu at Penguin's office while it was being printed in 2015 or 16. So this is not Derek's first book. If you haven't read the book yet, we're not going to go into too much detail. It's quite a hilarious book to me. I cracked up laughing a couple of times. I do encourage you to read it after this chat. And today we have the author telling us why drinking baijiu is good or not good, and how to fall in love with this Chinese national drink, right? So before we start, I will give just a very brief introduction of Derek. In addition to authoring several books on Chinese history and culture, Derek is also the founder of Ming River Baijiu. Could you hold up a bottle in the
Oh, of course.
I have it's a beautiful bottle, Mingjiang. I have a bottle on the way, but it's not quite here. It's my fault. This is an award-winning baijiu crafted with, in partnership with the Chinese oldest baijiu distillery, Luzhou Laojiao in Sichuan. So if you've read the book, you already know a little bit about Derek's personal story. He talked about how he sort of discovered and learned baijiu via, I think, 300 shots. We'll talk about that quantity if that's a hurdle we have to jump through. And but he is the most authoritative figure, I would say, on Chinese baijiu. And anybody who wants to know anything about baijiu, Derek is the go-to name. Now, I'll leave
I would like to correct that briefly and say, among people who are not Chinese, there are many people in China who know a lot more about baijiu than I do.
Oh, thank you. That's both modest and reflects, yes, the popularity of this drink in China. And I would say probably I can easily quote my brother or my father on this topic. Every Chinese man I know almost. Anyway, so we are very fortunate. Derek has agreed to show us how to mix a drink. And we'll start with that. And following that, I'll kick off the discussion while sipping our drink. And we'll talk about baijiu. It should be a very fun, relaxing event. I hope some of you have the fixings to join us. If you do, type a 1 in the chat box. Let me see how many of us are playing along. Okay, we do have Gregory.
One amateur mixologist with us tonight. So we're going to make a Sichuan Mule, which is let me angle this up a little bit, a riff on the classic vodka cocktail, the Moscow Mule. So the first thing you're going to need is a cup filled with ice. I have a little panda bear here. We'll leave him on the table. So there we go. And I filled this with ice. The reason I picked this cocktail is because it's both very delicious. I think it shows off Ming River pretty well, but also if you're not a professional bartender like me, it's pretty hard to mess up. So we'll jump in with that. So the first thing you need to do is 1.25 ounces, or 40 milliliters of baijiu. What kind of baijiu you're using is very important. You want to use Ming River ideally, but definitely a strong aroma baijiu. And if you're using one from China that's got a little higher alcohol level in it, like the one May is holding up, another Luzhou Laojiao baijiu, you'll probably want to use slightly less. So maybe like 1 ounce of baijiu instead of 1 ounce and a third.
This is 52%.
Exactly. So Ming River is 45. So
Okay.
just to avoid it being too strong, I would tone it down to 1 ounce if you're using a different strong aroma baijiu. The next thing you're gonna put in your little glass is an equal amount of apple juice. This is not a traditional Moscow Mule ingredient, but it is delicious and it tones down the baijiu just a little bit. Next
I
up,
have, Derek, I have freshly squeezed apple juice. Do you prefer a freshly squeezed or the bottled?
I've got this, like, for a while I was only making it overseas and I could only get like really sugary apple juice. So this is more of a natural apple juice that I'm working with today. We're gonna find out which is better pretty soon. And if it's like not sweet enough, I would just add more ginger beer at the end. So I'm gonna squeeze half a lime in here, which is about like 2/3 of an ounce or like 20 milliliters. I don't know if that's quite enough, so I'm gonna add a little more on top that I squeezed earlier. Then you're going to take your ginger beer and just fill that up. You might want to taste it before you get to the very top to make sure it's not too sweet. So you've got a lot of variations you can work with on this particular drink. I'm going to stir this up with a little bamboo straw. So what's nice about this kind of ingredient, it's only using a few different ingredients, and then I'm going to put a little garnish of some thyme sticking out of my panda bear. What's nice about this kind of a drink is it's only got a few ingredients. So if it's not sweet enough, you could add more ginger beer or juice. If it's not sour enough, you could add a little more lime juice. If it's not boozy enough, pour in more baijiu. So make it to your drink. You don't need to be bound by the recipe I've given you. You can improve upon it to your taste. And I think this one came out pretty good, but a real important pro tip is don't brush your teeth right before you drink this, or it's going to taste really funny. So with that, I have my cocktail, and I think we're ready to get going.
I have mine. It looks pretty good. I think this is a perfect summery drink to kick up the summer.
Good.
Thank
good.
you. Cheers.
I hope everyone out there who pressed 1 is also enjoying it.
And the rest of the ones who did not press 1, go for it after the talk. The night is young.
Indeed.
Oh, this is surprisingly good. Yes,
I don't know why
good.
you're surprised, but yes, it is good.
Yeah. So, okay, let's kick in. Now, Derek, I wonder, because I don't have this session is conducted in English. We actually also host a lot of events in Chinese, and to our Chinese friends in the Wild China community. And I wonder if they saw us drinking baijiu like this, would they think the same way as what Westerners used to look at Chinese when Chinese would take the Rothschild wine and goes like, it's a little biting or something. Let me pour some Coca-Cola in there. Would they feel as offended the same way, you think?
I mean, if they are, I can just pour myself a little glass and we can connect in that way. But it's certainly possible. One of the things that I have to deal with a lot in my daily job, which is selling baijiu outside of China, is the fact that I am approaching people who have never experienced baijiu before and aren't used to drinking baijiu in the traditional setting, which would be neat at room temperature, usually in a tiny glass like this, alongside food. And in general, most parts of the Western world don't drink hard liquor at dinner time by itself. That's a very unusual thing outside of China or East Asia, generally speaking. So cocktails are the way that most liquor is consumed outside of China. So we're, using this more as like an entry point into it. But me personally, if I'm going out with my friends and I get to drink however I want, I'll go out the same way I would when I was living in Chengdu. I'll go to a nice restaurant, I'll order piles of spicy food, and I'll just take it in shots, usually with a very like watery yellow beer as well. So yeah, there is this resistance, I think, to baijiu in a cocktail, particularly in China, I think, because people have pretty set notions about what they think baijiu is and how it should be consumed over there. I think I told this story in Drunken China at one point when I was in Beijing talking to a very good bartender I know. And I asked him about this baijiu cocktail he was making me that was just fantastic. Like I was asking him, so you must make a ton of money selling this baijiu to all of your guests here in Beijing because you're in China, this is a Chinese ingredient, people must want to try this and get excited about it. And he said, actually no, my problem here is that all of the Westerners see baijiu on the drink and they say, ooh, baijiu, I don't want to drink that. And the Chinese people come in and they see baijiu in a cocktail and they say, like, baijiu doesn't belong in a cocktail, what are you doing? Like his Chinese guests were going there because they wanted to have Western drinks mixed into cocktails, not baijiu. So one of the kind of fascinating things that I've discovered in the last several years of selling baijiu in America and Europe is that the easiest people to convince to drink baijiu are often people who have never tried baijiu before, because they're coming at it with a completely clean slate. They're not, they're not being like sat down at a business meeting and being made to drink like 30, 40 shots one after the other. They're not, it's not like something they grow up with. They don't associate it with their grandparents or, being, blackout drunk at a wedding. It's just they're coming into it just assessing it like, what does this thing taste like and do I like it? And there's quite a few baijus out there that I think people do like. Not just people who are raised with these tastes, but they actually do kind of think they're a fun, interesting drink.
Yeah, very interesting. I was going to say, as you were saying, like in China, people don't drink like this. Is I was imagining my brother who can't do every meal has, I don't know how much, but he loves baijiu. And he would look at this and say, that's a girly drink. That could be that you've experienced that, I'm sure, right? They would say like, it's sweet, it's minty, it's fruity, and there's this Chinese macho-ness that goes along with drinking baijiu, very much embedded in that culture, right? And so
machismo is a big part of the like baijiu drinking ritual in China, and yeah, it's there. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of like complex thoughts about it. It's just like, yeah, that's like a way of looking at the world that's pretty gendered and like very sexist, but like, I mean, it's not my job to change Chinese drinking culture. I'm just I'm just here for the ride.
No, I put that out because I often thought about it as a female entrepreneur working in China. I am actually grateful for this sort of bias. They're like, oh, she's a woman, and it's okay if I don't actually join you in those toasts. Generally speaking, I can get by in business meetings and say like, oh, 我不喝酒, I don't drink, and I can get by. But men, it's very hard to get by, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. This is a question, like, I'm sorry to, I know you invited me here to ask me questions, but I have a question for you about that, because this is something that I didn't really examine in my book, and I'm curious to know your thoughts about. Does the fact that like you aren't expected to do this like high level like business negotiation act make you feel that you're not welcome in the business world of China by like conversely, like they're saying you're a woman, you don't need to do this thing that high level business people do. Doesn't that like implicitly say that like you're not welcome in the business world?
Uh, no,
You don't think so?
I did not feel that way. But very often, this sounds awful, and it's only in this enclosed Zoom room. But if I have a male colleague with me who may report to me, I feel for him, because immediately they will just pile the drinking responsibilities on him, right? They would go like, "Oh, 小王，来来来，你帮老板."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
Right?
you're absolutely right that there is also I'm forgetting that yeah, you can assign your drinking responsibility to someone else, which is I think like the least fair thing that happens at like Chinese business meetings where the big boss like doesn't want to drink and he just like points to someone's like, you're taking the next 20 shots. And that's what's happening. Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
the the
Yeah.
correct way to get out of drinking is to foist it on someone else. Yes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah, except you are the last one left holding the music chair. Okay, so Derek, let's go back a little bit. I know you wrote about this, how you sort of like first time encountered it, having your throat singed by this strong stuff, but you gradually fell in love with it, or you sought for the love. So set the scene for us, set the drinking scene for us. Maybe you have, while telling the story, you have some pictures from your travels around China.
I do.
That,
So this is very exciting. I was just going through this before we started this call. I was looking for pictures about the things that are described in this book. So I found what I think is the earliest picture of me drinking baijiu that has been taken. This was not that first experience described in the book. This was at a wedding in America, like after my first year in China. But then I found this other picture of me from like a year ago. This is Chengdu in 2019. So I think this is a good case that like I haven't matured very much over the years, but I got to be true to my roots. So the first time that I had baijiu was in the fall of 2006. I was living in Shanghai. I was working as an English teacher, and I was at this Thanksgiving party where it was a potluck. Everyone like brought a dish and like a bottle of wine, and this guy Avi, who hadn't well, he was like kind of like the like wise elder who he was a guy from Philadelphia, and he had been in China like 6 months longer than everyone else. So he spoke like I'm sure like 50 words of Mandarin, and like had seen things that he wanted to tell the rest of us about. And he picked up a bottle of baijiu on the way to this party and just made everyone drink it. It was, I'm sure, something that cost like 50 cents. It was real bad. It left a terrible impression on everyone.
oh no.
And it was just kind of like a joke. And like that picture that you saw, like of me drinking, the oldest baijiu picture of myself, that was me playing the joke on other people. Like 6 months after that, when I was the person who had been in China for a little bit longer, and I was taking this drink to people that had never encountered baijiu before, and just kind of laughing at this cheap, disgusting baijiu that I had found. So that was my first experience, and then I encountered it like more and better baijiu at business meetings over the next several years. I lived in Shanghai for like 5 years, and the like more advanced I became in my professional career, the more I was invited out to the kind of like business meetings where someone would have a nice bottle of baijiu. But I didn't really care for it. It seemed to me like kind of confusing, both in terms of like it didn't taste like anything else I was drinking, but also confusing to me as someone raised in the American Midwest who like feels this like very like Protestant work ethic that I grew up with, like the notion of just getting completely hammered on hard liquor at like 11 a.m. like didn't feel like I like when that happened, I knew like my work day was done. I wasn't gonna get anything done in the afternoon. And like I was like, why are people doing this? Like this doesn't seem to like be conducive to a work day. But I was in this like taxi cab leaving one of those drinking sessions, and I was like asking myself that question, like, why are people doing this? And then like the closer I got to my office, I was in publishing at the time, and we
Right.
published books about various Chinese cultural topics. So that like why are people doing this became the question, like why are people doing this? And then like, oh, maybe there is actually a question that needs to be interrogated here. What is this, incredibly popular drink that's consumed in crazy numbers in China, billions of liters of it every year? Why are people drinking this here, and why aren't people drinking this in other parts of the world? And um, yeah, I had the rest of the afternoon to think about that because I didn't get any work done, obviously, but I had the idea for what my next book would be. And I didn't get around to writing it. 2 or 3 years passed. I got married, and my wife became a diplomat in the US government.
Yeah.
And I thought I was done with China for a while, that we would be sent somewhere on the planet and I would start learning more about that place. But within a month of her joining the State Department, they told us we were being sent to Chengdu. So after about like 2 months out of China, I went right back. And Chengdu, I learned right after I got there, was the like center of the Chinese alcohol industry. So I'll just like to give people like a notion of like what a crazy place Chengdu can be. I'm going to show you like a few, let's see here. I'm going to pull up a picture of, this is an annual like alcohol event that happens in Chengdu every year. It's called the wine Tongzhouhui. So like the candy and alcohol fair. Figure that one out.
It's a
But
kids and daddy together.
yeah, so you can see this. It's just this really like crazy event where there's like thousands of liquor brands, and like all these people are like out there, and they've got these like Mickey Mouse like alcohol characters everywhere. And I like went around to this place because I'd learned like before I went to Tongzhouhui for the first time that from a friend who worked in the baijiu industry that like the fair happened on the weekend, but like the real fair happened the week before the like Tongzhouhui started. And that was in hotel rooms all over the city of Chengdu. And that's where the like business meetings happen between different distilleries, between their suppliers. And they would spend like a week there. And so you got to like go, like I just spent like a week like walking around in these hotels and just giving people my business card, asking them about what they did, where they were from, what kind of baijiu they made. And like slowly but surely I began to like piece together like a network of people who were willing to teach me about baijiu. And it was hit or miss. Like a lot of times I would introduce myself to people who were very important and tell them what I was doing, and they would just look at me and say like, foreigners don't drink baijiu, go away. And a lot of times I would talk to people who were like nobody, had no hope of ever selling a bottle of Baijiu to someone outside of China. But they were like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Like if you're ever in, random town in Shanxi province, like give me a call and we'll go, like, I'll take you to my Baijiu factory and we can talk about Baijiu. And so I left this first week at Tongzhou Hui with a stack of business cards like this tall, and I just kind of went through and I made a plan. And then I traveled around the country for like six weeks or so, and went to a lot of different alcohol producing regions. I was based in Sichuan, so I'd been going to distilleries there on and off the whole time I was based there. But I also went to like Maotai, Guilin, I went to Guangdong, Fujian. I went up north, I went to Qingdao, saw some beer. That didn't make it into the book. It was not super interesting. I went to Yantai, that also didn't make it into the book. But and I had a real like dark few days in Harbin, where I was just sick in a hotel room trying to recover from my earlier trips. But then I had these like a string of like great experiences, all of which made it into the book, in northern China, where I just hung out with a few different families for a few days, and they really just kind of like welcomed me in and tried to like show me what it was about drinking culture that they liked in China. And so I thought that was like a really, to me personally, meaningful part of this experience. But I don't think I've like totally answered your question about how I went from like not liking Baijiu to liking Baijiu. And the answer is like really simple and obvious in retrospect, which is I didn't know anything about Baijiu when I didn't like Baijiu. I knew that the things that I had consumed, I did not like, but I didn't understand, like I didn't know what Baijiu was even made of. I think a lot of people think Baijiu is made from rice. Some of it is, but most of it's made from sorghum. Baijiu is not one drink. It's at least 12 different drinks, and they don't taste anything like one another. So just having had a handful of Baijius at random banquets, you might have had 2 types of Baijiu, maybe 3 if you're like really lucky and you've been drinking a lot, but you probably haven't experienced like the full depth of diversity that is Chinese liquor. So it really took me educating myself as to what Baijiu was, what the different types were, and not trying to be more systematic about it, not just anecdotal, because I think most people have anecdotes about Baijiu, good or bad, but very few people have like sat down and tried a bunch of different Baijius one after the other and said like, maybe I don't like this one, but this one's pretty good, and this one's maybe somewhere in the middle, and this one, like, throw it in the garbage and I never want to see it ever again. Like that's like a normal experience when you taste someone on a bunch of different Baijiu, but most people don't get that far, or most people don't have Baijiu presented to them in a way where they're going to be able to appreciate it in that way. So if you're just at the New Year's celebration, or if you're just at the business meeting, you're gonna get, some 50-year-old guy's gonna sit down next to you. He's gonna pop that bottle on the table. He's gonna take the lid off, and you can't leave until the bottle's empty. And that's a hard way to experience something for the first time, especially something as strong as Baijiu. But there is hope, I think.
Yeah, I think it's probably, this is a much easier introduction into it. One thing that struck me as you were saying, I think Baijiu in some ways, it could be a calling card or a door into serendipity, sort of chanced upon encounters in China. Because if you are willing to take a sip, anybody will drink with you, almost, right?
For sure.
On the train, well, I don't know if train it's still allowed on the train now, but like you were saying, like someone would say, you know, if you ever come to this random corner, fifth tier town in China, and you want to drink baijiu, give me a call. People will always open their door to their factory, their house, their village, and invite you in, right? That's almost.
I think so. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, just based on my own experience, it like probably helps being like a random foreigner who is in a like small village. But one thing I've noticed, and again, I can only like comment on my own experience. I'm not like a super like I'm a pretty introverted person. You might not be able to tell because I've been talking for half an hour, but I'm like generally pretty shy around strangers. But one thing that I discovered, I mean, alcohol helps loosen you up a little bit, so that's good if you're already drinking a little bit. But one thing that's pretty special about Chinese drinking culture is if you've got a bottle of baijiu and you're at a restaurant almost anywhere in China, you can walk around that restaurant and pour shots for people and they will drink with you. They will invite you to sit down with them. They will maybe order another bottle. It's a real easy way to connect with like groups of total strangers and become friends like instantly. So that's pretty fun. You have to be comfortable with the fact that like you're going like you might get a little drunker than you want to be because you know you can't. The problem, and I do get into this quite a bit in the book, like one of the problems with Chinese drinking culture as it exists at this moment in history is unless you say like, sorry, I'm a woman, sorry, I'm driving, I'm sick, unless you present an excuse for why you can't drink at that particular moment and you like take the first shot in a drinking session, you have tacitly agreed to like continue drinking until everyone is done. And there's always someone that wants it to go a lot longer than you do. So it's very hard to politely like stop the drinking session.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's basically it is impossible to do it politely. You can just get up and walk out of the restaurant, and you know, I think people will say like, oh, he's drunk or whatever, and like no one will think about it. But it's not an easy train to get off of.
So I have so many more questions. I could totally take over the entire session, but I see lots of questions are already coming in and there are quite a few pre-submitted. Let me just ask one question, maybe to move towards more the not technical, but how do you appreciate this drink side? I just took this mix. I just took, I don't know, 3 sips, 4 sips or something. The Chinese words that I've forgotten came back to me. 上头, 上脸, and 香, right? Those are I'll explain, because in China, whenever we drink, they say, oh, 这个酒上头上脸, because it charges straight to your head, straight to your face, and then you have a bit of a flush. And are those characters deemed good or bad on the baijiu? And my dad and my brother always say, 这个酒香, which literally translates as fragrant. But what are we looking for? What is xiang? What is the good traits of a baijiu? And then we can go through the questions on process of making.
So I mean, 很香 is like that's the generic way of praising an alcohol, like how fragrant, how aromatic, but it's not like a very useful descriptive term. Like it doesn't tell you a lot about like what you're going to experience, and I think that's that's a very different, like, that's a big difference between like the way people talk about alcohol in the West, where they're like sipping on wine and saying like, oh, it smells like sandalwood and like a hint of cardamom, like, you know, like
Yeah,
they're
goji
very like
berry.
convoluted ways of discussing your alcohol. And you know, I've been in the Western alcohol world for a little while now, so I am equally pretentious when I describe my baijiu today. But um, basically, the, all baijius today are blended products, which means that they're produced in batches, and each batch tastes a little bit different than the other batches. Some are considered better, some are considered worse, and usually, like the higher end baijius are going to contain more of the like best quality spirits. But you should think of baijiu blending like you would like preparing a good Chinese banquet, where you want as many different dishes that are bringing something to the table, and you want them to be like balanced out. So like the perfect baijiu, and the reason why like the baijius from Sichuan and Guizhou in particular are considered the most valuable, is because they're incredibly complex. They have and they've actually done studies on this in recent years. Like these two styles of baijiu, Nongshang and Jiangshang, like strong and sauce aroma, are like have hundreds of different like aromatic compounds that they bring to the table. Whereas like the some of the less complex baijius only have like a dozen or 2 dozen. So you like the best baijiu is considered one that has as many flavors as possible, but always in balance. If any of these flavors are like drowning out the others, you're going to like have a product that's not particularly like great to drink. Another thing I think baijiu drinkers are looking for is like the mouth feel, what they call kogan, and like a nice like coating of your mouth, like where it like kind of like maybe tingles a little bit, but like doesn't like has a nice like oily texture. It goes down easy. It doesn't like burn in your throat, which is quite difficult to do when you're dealing with alcohol that's as like high strength as a lot of baijiu is. So the really good ones do a good job of this. The really bad ones like feel like you're pouring kerosene down your mouth, and aren't great. So yeah, it is an art, and I question how much or how many of the people who say like Henxiang when they're describing like baijiu, like are they actually like commenting on like whether this is like great or not, or are they just like complimenting the person who brought the expensive bottle of baijiu? Probably more of the latter. But you're seeing more and more in recent years like people in China trying to like better understand and appreciate this category. um more and more at like the younger like international level of consumption as well. So I'm optimistic about baijiu becoming a better appreciated and understood thing in China in the future.
So Gregory Ruff has both pre-submitted question, which says, why does drinking copious amount, actually just me light amount, make you feel like it's heated, like 发热, like you feel warm? And do you ever have that feeling?
I've had that feeling.
Okay. Is it
I think it's pretty common with any alcohol. I don't know the exact like chemical reason for this. I do know one thing you were mentioning, like the flushing of the face. That is something that's like I touch on briefly in my book, but there is actually like a genetic like enzyme deficiency that many people in Southeast Asia have that makes it actually like more difficult for certain people to digest alcohol. And one of like the signs of that is that your face turns bright red if you drink. And it can actually lead to like several like health problems if you drink too much. So be careful if you turn bright red. You might not want to drink that much.
Yeah. And another question submitted here is, can you talk a little bit about the distillation process? How is baijiu produced? And what makes
Sure,
your
sure.
Ming River baijiu particular?
Oh, well, I'm not sure we have enough time to get into all of it, but the main things that I tell people about baijiu, all baijiu is made from grain. That's very important, and it's grain that's mixed with something that's called chu, QU. And the chu is basically, it's a fermentation starter used in like all East Asian like wines and alcohol. So they call this nuruk in Korea, they call it koji in Japan. And it's just like a collection of microorganisms that are harvested on grains, usually rice or wheat. And they mix these together with grains in order to ferment them in like a solid state. So with most Western like beers and whiskeys and grain alcohols, what you're going to do is you're actually going to like convert the starch of a grain into sugar, and then you're going to extract that sugar into a liquid. And then you're going to add yeast to the liquid to ferment that way. Whereas with chu, you can actually do this in a solid state. So they actually mix steamed grains together with chu, and that ferments the grains in like a solid mash. So you've got a big, you end the process with a big pile of fermented grains that aren't liquid. So how do you get the liquid out of this is the question. Where does the alcohol come into this? So there's alcohol in these solid grains, and the way you get it out is you put it in a Chinese pot still. And these mechanically and how they look are like giant dim sum dumpling steamers. They're big round cauldrons that have like a slotted bottom. So you pile the fermented grains on top of the slotted bottom, and you put them over boiling water. So steam actually rises up through the solid fermented mash, and the heat of the steam actually like burns the alcohol out of the mash, and it begins to steam off the top. So you collect the alcoholic vapors, you cool them back down by running them in tubes through water, and it comes out this crystal clear, high proof alcohol that we call baijiu. And that is it in a nutshell. I know that's fair.
You can do this in, how long does this take? You can do it in a day.
Different amounts for different styles. So one of the big differences between the different styles of baijiu is how long and in what method they ferment the baijiu. So you can ferment your grains with chu for like 2 or 3 days, or you can do it for like half a year, like 7-8 months. So the length of time that you're fermenting makes a big difference. But for example, Ming River, one of the things that makes this baijiu really unusual is that it's all fermented in mud pits. And I'm going to, I hadn't prepared to show you guys this, but like let's get into it, because I'm going to share my screen with you, because this is very hard to explain without sharing my screen. So okay, so this is the distillery floor of the distillery where Ming River Sichuan Baijiu is made. So what you're looking at here are mud fermentation pits. Each one of these pits that you're looking at can hold about 20 to 30 tons of sorghum. So each one of these goes down about 2 meters, 2 or 3 meters into the ground. And what they do is they shovel the baijiu into these mud pits, put a clay seal on top, like the one you're seeing here. And they leave them in there for 2 to 3 months at a time. So this style of baijiu is kind of unique in that the way that they do this is that because there's so much grain in there, you can't distill it all at one time. So you like take a portion of that out, you distill it, and then you throw it away. And then you mix in fresh sorghum with the grain that's already been fermented. And so you put them in these stills that function on steam. So you're actually like steaming the grain you just added at the same time that you're distilling the fermented grain that was already in there. So once you take the grain out of the still, you have a fresh source of starch where you can add more chew, and then you put the grains back in the fermentation pit. So you're fermenting and distilling the same grain over and over again for weeks, months, and years. And the reason that our distillery, Luzhou Laojiao, which means Luzhou, which is the city where this distillery is located, Laojiao means old pit. You're using fermentation pits that have been making baijiu for sometimes hundreds of years. The oldest fermentation pits at our distillery are from 1573. So some of like the oldest, like most complex baijiu like fermentation that's happened anywhere in the world.
So inside, I just want to be clear, inside those pits, it's not clear liquid like this. It's the grain that is in the process of fermentation.
Yes.
Right?
Again, I've got pictures of all this stuff if you want to see it.
Well, I find that structure architecturally stunning. I mean, that could be a place where we can, while China has a corporate event team, we can totally do a corporate event in there.
Well, I am actually, I am trying to set up your colleagues. We've been discussing this.
Aha.
So hopefully we can get them in there. Oh, for whatever reason, my MASH pictures aren't opening. But oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so thank you for bearing with me, audience. I know this isn't probably what's most excited you, but yeah, what you're looking at here, this is actually mash that's just been distilled, coming out. And what they're doing right now is like, this is what's in the pit, these big piles of solid grain. And after they come out of the still, the temperature of this mash is way too hot for fermentation, because if it's too hot, the yeast will die. So what they do after they've distilled the grain is they actually rake it out on the floor, and then they throw like buckets of water on it to bring down the temperature. And once the temperature is back closer to room temperature, then they'll add more of the chew yeast culture, and it'll start the grains fermenting all over again. So it's a cycle that goes 2 to 3 months at a time, and they do it over and over and over again.
What a fascinating process.
That is what makes what's called strong aroma baijiu, which comes from Sichuan, and that is why we call Ming River Sichuan baijiu, because Sichuan is a much nicer thing to say than strong aroma. But that's where it comes from.
Okay, 你说的就是浓香型, right? Yeah, in China.
Exactly.
Okay, we still have a few more questions. How important is water and the particular variety of the grain, sorghum or whatever? Sure. Is it like wine? You know, the grapes determine the quality of the wine, partially.
Well, I mean, water, I mean, if you ask any of these distilleries, they will tell you that the water is of critical importance, and that I mean, there's different levels of like acidity and salinity and minerality that is found in the water. But generally speaking, I think you want like kind of a neutral-ish water with pretty light minerality. So most baijiu today is not coming from like rivers and streams. You probably wouldn't want to drink a lot of baijiu that's coming out of the Yangtze River, for example. But it's mostly coming from like mountain streams that are going to be purified to take any like pollutants or impurities out of them. It is very important. Water is used at pretty much every stage of baijiu production. So you steam the grains with water. You add a little bit of water before you add the yeast, and then you steam the grains again. And before you bottle baijiu, you usually mix it with water to bring down the strength of the alcohol. Having good water is essential. In terms of the grains, a lot of the grains is locally grown in both South and North China. It grows a bit of sorghum. But honestly, a lot of sorghum gets imported from other countries like Australia, the United States. Both grow a ton of sorghum. The United States is the biggest producer of sorghum in the world, in fact. What's the most important thing, and every baijiu producer will tell you this, is the chu, the fermentation agent, because those are not produced in laboratories. Those are actually produced at the site of the distillery. And all of the microorganisms that you find in a baijiu, like in the chu, and we're talking about mold, yeast, and bacteria, have a huge impact on the flavor of the drink. And all of those microorganisms come from the air at the distillery. So if you look on a map of where most baijius are produced, there's like a band along like the southern part of the country that includes Sichuan, Guizhou, Guangxi, Guangdong. Like this whole part of southern China is the part that produces like 90+% of all the alcohol in China, because it's very humid and there's a lot of microorganisms that are growing in the air because it's very damp, and it's just very, very conducive to making chu. So I've worked with the Luzhou Laojiao distillery for about 5 years now. They have yet to let me even step inside of the room where the chu is made, because it is the most closely guarded trade secret in the baijiu industry, each distillery's chu. So one day I hope to get to that level of trust with them, but I'm not holding my breath.
No, it's like the syrup recipe for Coca-Cola.
Yeah, it's the secret sauce.
That is the secret sauce. Okay, we have a couple of easier questions. Adam Roy asks, where can we buy the Ming River Baijiu? If you don't mind typing in the chat box.
Oh, this is very easy. It is for people in the United States. It is shopmingriver.com.
Shopmingriver.com. Fantastic.
If you're in Europe, Amazon, in the UK, and there's, I want to say, you can reach out to us if you're not in the UK, and we can try to find baijiu for you. But it is not sold in mainland China, so I apologize for people who would like to buy it there. But Luzhou Laojiao makes a lot of really good baijius. Tochu, the head chu is a very good one. Tuchu is even better. So check those out.
Mine is arch, means second. It's like the third rate.
It's not their highest end product.
Okay, I found it at Ranch 99. So,
but it's fine. It's a cheaper baijiu that Luzhou Laojiao makes, and when we're talking about cheaper baijiu, we're not talking about toxic bad baijiu, but what happens is, like I said, all baijiu is blended. So the cheapest baijius will be blended with some things that aren't baijiu. So for example, there will be just some neutral alcohol in there, like a vodka will be blended into it, because that's much cheaper to make than a traditional baijiu. Okay. But it's going to be mostly real baijiu, but there will be some vodka type spirit blended in there.
We still have so many pre-submitted questions we haven't gone through, but I
Well,
know we're coming up to an hour.
I can stay on as long as these people and you can, but I leave that.
Thank you.
It's your show. I'm just
Thank you.
here
I
for the ride.
normally try to wrap up on time so
Okay.
people will always come back. But some of the last bit is about the other baijiu that a lot of us know, Maotai.
Mhm.
Can we buy that in the US and are they real? Because it's so expensive. People are always talking about fake Maotai everywhere. Are the ones at the duty-free stores at the airport, are they real?
Yes.
What's your advice for people wanting to try baijiu in the US?
Yes. So the answer to the question is yes. And yes, you can buy Maotai in the United States, and yes, it is probably going to be real. This is one of the great ironies of buying expensive baijiu outside of China, is that all of the export products are going through like a very like heavily controlled export market. So like 100% of the Maotai you find at like an international duty-free store in like Paris or New York or London, you can buy that with absolute confidence that you're getting the real thing, because it's going through trusted partners every step of the supply chain. So like, yeah, that's the great irony, that like people drinking Maotai outside of China are like more likely to get real Maotai than people drinking Maotai inside of China. But I think that's starting to change too, because over the last like 10 years or so, online sales have gone through the roof in the Chinese baijiu market. So a lot of people are now buying their liquor at places like Tmall, JD.com, where there are trusted vendors that like are the official like online vendor of the distillery. So like and there have been scandals, like when they have detected fakes through certain sellers, they've like lost their right to sell Maotai, or they've been fined, or like customers have just gone to other people who aren't selling fakes. So I think it's a much safer situation than it used to be in China, where you had to go to the grocery store and you didn't know if they were selling you the real thing or the thing that someone sold them, and somebody's pocketing the difference. But usually in China, when you're having like a fake Maotai, you're not having like, you're still drinking baijiu. You might even be drinking good baijiu. You're just not drinking like Guizhou Maotai Fei Tian, which is their high-end product. And another thing to note, like Maotai is the name of a town that has hundreds of distilleries in it. So there are a lot of like brands that have Maotai in their name, that are real distilleries based in Maotai, just aren't the like Guizhou Maotai brand that you're probably thinking of.
The white porcelain bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. This is fascinating. Now, Derek, do you have any, I think we probably will wrap up. Do you have any parting advice for people dabbling into baijiu this coming summer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I should be saying drink responsibly, first of all. Don't follow my lead from Drunken China. No, I would say it is becoming increasingly available to drink baijiu around the world. So these days we're selling to a lot of places like New York, California, London, Paris, Berlin, all over the place. So if you are interested in learning more about baijiu, I would dive right in. Most big cities that have a Chinatown, for example, if you kind of poke around liquor stores in a Chinatown, you can usually find a handful of pretty good baijius and like start exploring with them. But if you want to go to bars, restaurants, like a lot of them are starting to work with it. And if you ever reach out to me or Ming River, which will most likely be an email that ends up in my inbox, don't be shy. We're always happy to like point people to people who are making like fun Baijiu cocktails or restaurants that are working with Baijiu. Like I said, I still like drinking it like the old-fashioned way, like with a heaping pile of like chili peppers and like a bunch of good friends. So that's fun too. But if you don't like drinking, don't let that stop you from buying my book and giving it to all of your friends, because you don't have to be drunk to read. It just helps.
Thank you so much, Derek. I absolutely can endorse that. Make sure this book, Drunk in China, it is a fun read. You don't have to drink to really enjoy it. It's terrific. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you
time.
very much.
And just give me 1 second, I will plug a little bit, a sneak peek announcement. We are actually working, I think we're with Derek, trying to figure out how to get to Luzhou Laojiao Distillery on a food tour in Sichuan. And also in July, we have trips going to visit Silver Heights Winery in Ningxia and a bunch of other wineries in Ningxia. So if you have the time, and in China, for those outside of China, I'm sorry, we just have a little bit longer time to wait, but that will only give the Luzhou Laojiao time to become even better. So join us again next month. We will be talking about snow leopard conservation in Sanjiangyuan National Park. It should be really fun. And with that, I wish everybody a wonderful summer. And Derek, have fun drinking and protect the kidney though. The liver, sorry.
I've been told by many distillers it's great for your kidney function. So
Yeah.
I should be great. I should be fine.
Should be fine. Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. Take care. And I do have a China podcast, China travel podcast. You can listen to many of these talks. Thank you. Happy summer.
Thank you.
Bye, Derek.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.